Several cost-effective hardwired electrical timers are available for controlling lighting in a condo building. For single-pole applications, consider these options. Firstly, the Intermatic S-Tone-C, a single-pole 24-hour dial timer. Secondly, the GT1016, a single-pole 7-day programmable timer. Thirdly, the Levin 6684, a single-pole digital countdown timer. For applications requiring zone control, explore these alternatives. Firstly, the Lutron MACL-4S, a 4-channel astronomical timer that allows scheduling of multiple zones. Secondly, the Intermatic E6000, a 6-channel heavy-duty timer suitable for larger loads in multiple zones. Thirdly, the Eaton Tone 181C, an 8-channel modular timer offering flexibility for adding or removing channels. When installing these timers, remember the following. Firstly, location. Install the timer near the service box for convenient access and wiring. Secondly, load capacity. Ensure the timer can handle the total wattage of the lights being controlled. Thirdly, wiring. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for proper wiring to the load and power source. Fourthly, programming. Program the timer according to the desired schedule and zone configuration. Additional tips include considering timers with daylight sensors to automatically adjust lighting based on ambient light levels. If the load exceeds the capacity of a single timer, use multiple timers or a higher capacity timer. Label the timers clearly to avoid confusion during operation or maintenance. When selecting a timer, firstly, consider the number of zones you need to control. Secondly, evaluate the total wattage of the lights in each zone. Thirdly, determine your preferred programming method, such as dial, digital, or astronomical. Fourthly, research the timer's features, such as daylight saving time adjustment and battery backup. Fifthly, read customer reviews to assess the timer's reliability and ease of use. Sixthly, ensure that the timer is compatible with your existing electrical system. Seventhly, verify that the timer meets all applicable safety standards and certifications. Eighthly, consider the timer's warranty and return policy. Ninthly, obtain any necessary permits or approvals before installation. Tenthly, consult with a qualified electrician if you have any doubts or questions about the installation process. When wiring the timer, firstly, disconnect the power supply to the circuit breaker that controls the lights. Secondly, identify the load wires which connect to the lights. Thirdly, locate the line wires which come from the power source. Fourthly, connect the load wires to the corresponding terminals on the timer. Fifthly, connect the line wires to the appropriate terminals on the timer. Sixthly, ensure that all connections are secure and properly insulated. Seventhly, replace the timer cover and restore power to the circuit breaker. Eighthly, test the timer to verify that it is working correctly. Ninthly, label the timer and the corresponding circuit breaker for easy identification. Tenthly, document the wiring connections for future reference. When programming the timer, firstly, consult the manufacturer's instructions for specific programming procedures. Secondly, set the current time and date on the timer. Thirdly, create a schedule for each zone, specifying the on and off times for the lights. Fourthly, consider using different schedules for weekdays and weekends. Fifthly, take advantage of any available features, such as daylight saving time adjustment and astronomical clock functions. Sixthly, test the schedule to ensure that the lights turn on and off as desired. Seventhly, make any necessary adjustments to the schedule based on your observations. Eighthly, save the schedule and lock the timer to prevent accidental changes. Ninthly, periodically review the schedule to ensure that it still meets your needs. Tenthly, keep a record of the schedule settings for future reference. When maintaining the timer, firstly, periodically inspect the timer for any signs of damage or wear. Secondly, clean the timer with a soft dry cloth. Thirdly, check the wiring connections to ensure that they are still secure. Fourthly, replace the timer if it is not functioning properly. Fifthly, keep the timer free of dust and debris. Sixthly, protect the timer from moisture and extreme temperatures. Seventhly, follow the manufacturer's instructions for any specific maintenance procedures. Eighthly, consult with a qualified electrician if you have any concerns about the timer's performance. Ninthly, keep a record of any maintenance performed on the timer. Tenthly, consider replacing the timer every few years to ensure optimal performance and reliability. Consider also the specific requirements of the condo building and any applicable regulations or codes. Factors such as energy efficiency, safety, and aesthetics may influence the choice of timer. It is also important to consider the long-term costs of operation and maintenance. A well-chosen and properly installed timer can provide significant energy savings and improve the overall functionality of the lighting system. Furthermore, it is advisable to consult with other residents or building management to gather input and address any concerns. Collaboration and communication can help ensure that the chosen timer meets the needs of the entire community. When selecting a timer with zone control, firstly, determine the number of zones that need to be controlled independently. Secondly, consider the complexity of the scheduling requirements for each zone. Thirdly, evaluate the timer's ability to handle different types of lighting loads such as incandescent, fluorescent, and LED. Fourthly, research the timer's programming interface and ensure that it is user-friendly and easy to navigate. Fifthly, consider the timer's power consumption and energy efficiency. Sixthly, ensure that the timer has sufficient memory to store multiple schedules and settings. Seventhly, verify that the timer has a battery backup to maintain the schedule in case of a power outage. Eighthly, consider the timer's ability to integrate with other building automation systems. Ninthly, research the timer's compatibility with different types of control devices, such as switches, sensors, and dimmers. Tenthly, consider the timer's ability to provide remote access and control through a mobile app or web interface. When installing a timer near the service box, firstly, ensure that there is sufficient space to accommodate the timer and its wiring. Secondly, verify that the service box is properly grounded and meets all applicable safety codes. Thirdly, consider the accessibility of the timer for programming and maintenance purposes. Fourthly, protect the timer from physical damage and environmental factors such as moisture and dust. Fifthly, ensure that the timer is properly labeled and identified. Sixthly, consider the use of a weatherproof enclosure if the timer is installed outdoors. Seventhly, consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that the installation is performed safely and correctly. Eighthly, document the installation process and wiring connections for future reference. Ninthly, obtain any necessary permits or approvals before commencing the installation. Tenthly, inform building management of the installation and provide them with any necessary information or documentation. When ensuring that the timer can handle the total wattage of the lights being controlled, firstly, calculate the total wattage of all the lights in each zone. Secondly, consult the timer specifications to determine its maximum wattage rating. Thirdly, ensure that the timer's wattage rating exceeds the total wattage of the lights being controlled. Fourthly, consider the use of a higher capacity timer if the total wattage of the lights is close to the timer's maximum rating. Fifthly, avoid overloading the timer, as this can damage the timer and create a fire hazard. Sixthly, use appropriate wiring and circuit protection to prevent overloading the timer. Seventhly, consult with a qualified electrician if you have any doubts about the timer's capacity. Eighthly, periodically check the timer's temperature to ensure that it is not overheating. Ninthly, replace the timer if it shows any signs of overheating or malfunction. Tenthly, follow the manufacturer's instructions for safe and proper operation of the timer. When following the manufacturer's instructions for proper wiring to the load and power source, firstly, carefully read and understand the manufacturer's instructions before commencing the wiring process. Secondly, identify the load wires which connect to the lights. Thirdly, locate the line wires which come from the power source. Fourthly, connect the load wires to the corresponding terminals on the timer, following the manufacturer's wiring diagram. Fifthly, connect the line wires to the appropriate terminals on the timer, following the manufacturer's wiring diagram. Sixthly, ensure that all connections are secure and properly insulated. Seventhly, use appropriate wire gauges and connectors for the wiring connections. Eighthly, double-check the wiring connections before restoring power to the circuit. Ninthly, consult with a qualified electrician if you have any doubts about the wiring process. 10thly, follow all applicable safety codes and regulations when wiring the timer. When programming the timer according to the desired schedule and zone configuration, firstly, consult the manufacturer's instructions for specific programming procedures. Secondly, set the current time and date on the timer. Thirdly, create a schedule for each zone, specifying the on and off times for the lights. Fourthly, consider using different schedules for weekdays and weekends. Fifthly, take advantage of any available features, such as daylight saving time adjustment and astronomical clock functions. Sixthly, test the schedule to ensure that the lights turn on and off as desired. Seventhly, make any necessary adjustments to the schedule based on your observations. Eighthly, save the schedule and lock the timer to prevent accidental changes. Ninthly, periodically review the schedule to ensure that it still meets your needs. Tenthly, keep a record of the schedule settings for future reference. In some cases, additional considerations may be necessary, such as integrating the timer with a building management system or complying with specific energy efficiency requirements. It is always advisable to consult with a qualified electrician or lighting specialist to ensure that the chosen timer is suitable for the specific application and that it is installed and programmed correctly.